Did you ever wonder what keeps a body and a soul together? And not just together. When a person is healthy, it's like a seamless connection. You can't even separate between body and soul. And then on the other hand, what then makes the body and soul separate upon death? The truth is, this question is about all organisms and all life. And you can even say about matter and energy itself. Why is matter stable? Why doesn't it implode? What keeps that balance? It's a big question in physics. Why is it only under extreme circumstances, extreme heat, high speeds, whether it's through fusion or fission, that will cause subatomic particles to split or to join? What is the basis of that stability? Now, this is not just a scientific, abstract question. It's also a very personal question and relevant to all of us. What is the role of the body and the soul in our lives? There are mystics that felt the only approach to finding truth is to live the ascetic lifestyle, to move away from material temptations and interests and live a life of the soul. The body was just a distraction or worse. Others feel, no, we have to find some way to balance the two, but you have to compromise. And then, of course, the majority of people simply live a materialistic life, and often, and very rarely, and at times when there's no choice perhaps, will they search for some transcendence. Can the body and soul live in total peace on a spiritual level, on a psychological level? Can our materialistic needs and our spiritual transcendent needs be reconciled? Furthermore, be integrated. So please join me in this very relevant discussion. Body and soul, a divine partnership. Hi, Simon Jacobson here. We'll be speaking about Body and Soul, a Divine Partnership. This program is in loving memory of Megan Lehman. May her soul be a blessing for her family, dedicated by her father, Ricardo Lehman. I remember even as a young child thinking, what keeps a body and a soul together? I realized that here we are, alive, clearly a body, and there's some energy within it that gives us life, energizes us, and they are like working in a seamless way. But then also knowing that there comes a point where a person ages and ultimately body and soul get separate. So I remember asking my parents, teachers, no one gave me an answer. Everyone said, you'll get older, you'll figure it out. It's a question everyone has. One of the mysteries. As I got older, I realized that's very true. It is a big question. The question is not just about body and soul, it's a question about matter itself. Even until recently, many theories have been posited, but the question is, what gives matter its stability? We know today that matter and energy, E equals mc squared, are reversible and are actually two forms of the same thing. All matter is energy, and all matter can be turned into energy, and energy can be turned into matter. And yet, matter remains stable, unless extreme situations. Heat. So you put a piece of wood in a fire, it'll break down the wood and it'll turn it into fuel, And then matter, of course, becomes less stable, turns into ash. You subject other matter to extreme levels of heat, you can literally also create an instability on the atomic structure, the molecular structure. High speeds, nuclear fusion, nuclear fission. But leaving matter alone, unless exposed to extreme situations, it has a stability that we totally rely on. So what keeps it that way? Why doesn't it implode? Why don't the energy, the particles, the molecular particles made up of atomic and subatomic particles, what keeps them glued together to create a solid object like this table? Or this body for that matter? So you'll find many theories out there. Some ironically actually rely on Heisenberg's uncertainty principle. I remember a book called The Most Certain and Reliable Machine on Earth is built upon the uncertainty principle. Computers. The uncertainty principle states that not due to lack of knowledge, but fundamentally, on a subatomic level, the velocity and the position of an atom cannot be known. And based on that, there are theories that that's what keeps it together, because two quantum particles can never be exactly the same, and therefore that tension keeps them together. I'm not going to go through all the details of it, but it's interesting. But I'd like to present an approach I have not seen, but it's based on mysticism, particularly Kabbalistic thought, as explained by the Hasidic masters. But it takes us into a journey into another world, not of physics, but of psychology. And I would call it spirituality. Now remember, since we understand today and that everything is united, and there's really an inherent unity in all of existence, and that elusive unified field principle is still being pursued. So in truth, even though you'll go to different courses, there'll be a course in science and physics, and there's a course in psychology, and courses in other ideas, but there are tremendous parallels. And I believe many of these parallels are ignored, or let's put it this way, not emphasized enough. And they can actually help us understand mysteries that one school of thought alone cannot resolve. And there's other schools that can be cross-pollinated and can help us understand. And by looking at things as a holistic whole, and whole means W-H-O-L-E, not whole, H-O-L-E, not like a black hole. We can really come to be enriched in all schools of thought. A number of years ago, I remember reading a book called The Quantum Brain. Then there was another book called The Quantum Mind, which explored some of the parallels of quantum mechanics with what they called, I don't know if they called it quantum psychology, but states of the subconscious, I like to call it the superconscious, that had parallels with quantum mechanics. In Friedrich Capra's classic, The Tao of Physics, he speaks about the parallels between quantum mechanics and Eastern mysticism. But one of the things to keep in mind, which really is fascinating in these parallels, is that the deeper you go beneath the surface, under the dashboard, as they say, behind the curtain, the more you see the commonality rather than the differences. In a way like the right brain, it connects everything, with the left brain distinguishing between details. In a way, the difference between Newtonian macroscopic physics and you can call it quantum microscopic physics. Some people refer to the East and the West, Western philosophy and Eastern philosophy, to the difference of yin and yang, square and circle, rigorous logic, structural, versus a more circular abstract. And both can be true. Both are true. Depends which level you're talking about. In a way, you can call that body and soul. So when you study these parallels, we can come away with a very profound understanding. So let's talk about the same question on a more personal, psychological, what I'll call psycho-spiritual level of matter and energy and body and soul. And that comes down to a big question that people have struggled with from the beginning of time. We clearly have at least two voices within us. You can call two forces, sometimes referred to as two souls. One the animal soul, one the divine soul. Or we use more secular terms, one survival and the other transcendence. The body energy is more about survival. When I say survival, I don't mean at the minimum, but it means dealing with the physical needs of a human being. And I'm talking on a human level now. To eat, to drink, rest, exercise, good health, hygiene, broaden it a bit, make a living, pay your bills, build a life that works. But then there's another part to us, which is not just animal bliss. There's an angst, there's a tension, there's a search. We'll call it transcendence, the voice of transcendence. Seeking something, seeking purpose, meaning. What is behind all of this? Why am I here? Where do I come from? So the animal in the wild doesn't struggle with that question, at least not that we know of. And that's why they have a certain bliss, a certain calm. I remember once, I'm a New York boy, I remember once in the summer going up to the mountains, Catskills, and it was the first time I ever saw with my own eyes a cow. There are no cows walking around the streets of Manhattan. Not human, not animal cows, at least. Yeah, they build these bulls in, I guess, in Wall Street, but they're not real. And I remember asking, I was driving, I think it was my uncle, I'm not sure, it was maybe my father, to stop. I wanted to just watch the cows, and I saw them grazing in the fields, and I was taken by it. Not so much about seeing a cow, but the way they were calm. No neurosis, no struggles, no fighting. Maybe they do when they need to breed or hunt. Well, cows don't hunt, but just calm. They have no needs for therapy. And for hours upon hours, I didn't spend hours up there, but I could tell that they are completely at peace. Very unlike the human race. They're not taking medications. They're not going, as I said, to therapists. They're not depressed. They're not euphoric. And indeed, they're also not driven to build anything, except to take care of their needs, to breed, to give birth, to feed their young, to protect them, to feed, and produce the next generation. There's no drama. As I said, they're not building better homes. They weren't building better technologies. They don't use technology altogether. And they're not seeking to. And they don't feel deprived. It's a very envious life for someone who's struggling. So what distinguishes us from them? We have a different voice. An additional voice, I should say. We also have that need to survive. All the things I mentioned. To breed, to feed, to take care of our young, to protect. But we have this other side. Connects to our curiosity. We'll spend millions, billions, trillions of dollars of it spent on NASA to explore one thing, to satisfy our curiosity. What's out there? We looked up to the stars. Is there life on other planets? What's out there? Yes, many derivatives have come from, many benefits have come from this exploration. But it was driven by that one question. No animal ever asked that question, and therefore never pursued it. So they say more knowledge, more pain. The more we're aware, the more difficult it is. But we do have that other side. We're not satisfied purely with animal bliss. As many pills, and as many addictions, and as many ways we try to numb ourselves and relieve our existential angst, there's something in us that remains hungry for that. That's the transcendent voice. And in many ways, there is a tension. You can say even more than a tension, a battle between these two voices. Because one is driven by self-interest. To take care of my needs. My body is hungry, I'm thirsty, I'm tired. I want recognition, I want respect, I want power, I want influence. Ego, the ego. The other voice is seeking something beyond yourself. So of course they're going to clash. Because every decision you make, am I going to take care of myself or am I going to help another? So I understand the evolutionary biological explanation is that even when you help another, it's also for yourself. Richard Dawkins' famous line or book, the selfish gene, even the very gene, not by nurture or education, not conditioning, the gene is inherently selfish. Because everything in life is about survival of the fittest. So even when you coexist with others, even when you love, even when you're noble, is because you're going to benefit from it. But something always rang untrue about that. In other words, to dismiss all the nobility, all the sacrifices, all the beauty of human behavior. Yeah, I understand it explains all the atrocities and all the inhumanity and injustices people have perpetrated against each other. But to dismiss all the other side of things, that it's also selfish, I don't know, it didn't resonate. And I'm not getting into a debate about the issue right now. Everyone will decide as they see fit. But there is a conflict between these two voices. Because the fact of the matter is, if loving another is so important for you, so why is it that people don't love others? Because they've decided that it's not important in that moment. I understand you can explain it. But I'd rather go with the approach that there are two voices, and there is a conflict, and we feel that conflict all the time. There's a battle going on between your animal soul and your transcendent soul. Or you can say between your body and your soul. And yet, as I discussed at the outset, they come together, work as one seamless whole. I'm not talking now that psychological battle. Now I'm talking about physically they're just together. But there is a psychological battle. So it's not just a battle between matter and energy on a physics or scientific level. It's also on a personal level. So which way do we go? So there were the ascetics, the school of thought that taught that for a person to really find truth in life and purpose, you have to give up as much as possible. Surrender your ego, your bodily needs, even to the point of living an ascetic lifestyle, not to indulge in food and drink and sleep, and basically break your body. Some went to extremes even. Extreme fasting, even punishing the body, afflicting it. To discover that the material world is your enemy. And by coming to peace with that, you can allow your soul to soar, to spread its wings. There are schools of thought like that till this day. Maybe not in such an extreme level. It's the idea, let me get away from the rush hour of the marketplace of Wall Street, metaphorically speaking, and go off to nature, to a mountain, to an oasis, to a valley, to meditate, and not be distracted by all this that's going on, the whole hoo-ha. especially today with technology literally inundating us with so much streaming of data, overwhelming our senses. Yeah, we may have become addicted to it and we think we may be emancipated by it. But that idea just to cut off, to unplug, sounds appealing and sounds like a viable option. But what do you do with that other side, the body side? You see it as your enemy. Maybe a necessary evil. I mean, in some ways, certain religions preach that there are necessary evils, but they're evils. Sexuality, maybe you need it, but it's not a positive. It's about your own selfish desires and pleasures. Celibacy may be the optimal way of serving God. The other approach, which more people have embraced, is not even an approach, is the default state. I'm a materialistic being, and even if I have some spiritual aspirations and transcendent ones, either they're illusions, as some cynics put it, or when they come around and if I have no choice, I'll give in. Or furthermore, maybe I also make it part of my repertoire. Weekends, vacation, moments of transcendence in my life. So many people compartmentalize between the body survival of the fittest approach and the more transcendent approach. Now, transcendence, I should spell out, includes everything from love, music, art, the more sublime things in life. Yes, faith, religion, spirituality. I'm talking again a person who's deliberate about it, conscientious about it, not talking about mechanical mode. But you do have the conflict, the tension, the tenuousness, which can be, as I said, a battle. You sit down to eat a meal. Are you eating and indulging in the meal because you're hungry? Or are you thinking about using the energy of that food for something more transcendent? These are two voices. And many of us, as we know, will gravitate often to the path of least resistance, which means whatever is more comfortable for us. Now, there are schools of thought. Just what comes to mind, the Calvinistic Protestant work ethic approach. That is true. Work was once seen as something for the peasants. But you have to look at work, being involved in the material world, as part of your divine mission. And that ultimately evolved through Weber and then John Calvin into capitalism, becoming a part of serving the divine. Yes, ever since it's become separated from the two, but that's due to the fact that even with that effort, there still remained something that was not reconcilable, because it seemed that the spiritual and the physical cannot really be integrated. In Jewish thought as well, I should say, this disagreement also took place. Just give you one example. The disagreement between the Maimonides and Nachmanides, the Rambam and the Ramban. They talk about reward, the reward for a person's work in this world. So the Rambam says, being that the soul is so superior to the body, so the ultimate reward for the soul's work in this world will be spiritual ecstasy, spiritual delight, spiritual knowledge, without the being encumbered by bodily needs, whether it's health, whether it's ego, whether it's other matters that the body is involved in. Because the body ultimately is mortal, subject to corruption, and so on. However, since the body and soul did work together, there will be a time where the reward will be given to both of them. But ultimately, long term, it's spiritual reward for a soul. And the body will not be part of that, because the body will just limit that experience, which makes a lot of sense. If we didn't have physical bodies, we wouldn't have to sleep, we wouldn't have to eat, we wouldn't have health issues. The soul can just bask in its spiritual meadows forever and ever. Comes Nachmanides and says, no. The ultimate reward is body and soul. Interestingly, the Kabbalistic and Hasidic masters followed Nachmanides' opinion. But there's a deep reason for this. And when I discovered this came to answer so many questions, including the question, what keeps the body and soul together? Because here is the mistake we all make. We look at material life and spiritual life as two dimensions, two options. And inevitably there will be conflicts between them. The body beckons and the soul wants to do something that is not body-like. Your self-interest dictates take care of yourself, and the soul, the transcendent voice, says, no, help another, even if it's not convenient for you. I mean, using very practical examples, there are much deeper ones as well. And that's it. There's either a material being or a spiritual being. But reality dictates something that's neither of the two. True reality, which the mystics will call the divine. I wanted to avoid the word God just to not distract anyone, because people have different perceptions and stereotypes about it. But for a moment, if you can put aside all your interpretations, that there's a third dimension that's neither body or soul. Most of us think you want to get closer to God, become more spiritual. So true spirit is definitely a direction to go, because it transcends the materialistic ego and materialism that divides us and spirituality that unites. But spirituality could also be selfish. You can be an arrogant spiritual person, feel you're superior to the materialistic people pursuing physical life. That there's a dimension that's neither of the two. Because even spirituality is a definition. It has its parameters. It's not matter. Soul is not body. And when you think about it, even though the soul and body do come together, but the soul did not create the body. And you see indeed upon what we like to say after 120 years, when they separate, it's not like the soul leaves and the body disappears. It takes time for the body to decompose. Because they're two different forces that originate from another place that's neither soul nor body. That tells us that the body can be just as close to that source as the soul. The difference is the body without the soul doesn't have guidance. It's like walking in the dark. The soul illuminates because it has clarity, it has a mind, discretion. The body just follows its needs, its impulses. The body is far more, therefore, emotionally impulsive emotions, whereas the soul is connected much more to a reflective mind. But that doesn't make the body inferior. It just makes it less. Think of a ship without a captain, the soul being the captain. But what's a captain without a ship? What is he going to navigate? You need the navigation, but you need the ship. You need the experience. So really, soul and body are two partners. Two partners, with each necessary, and in some ways, as the mystics explain, and I'm specifically quoting now Rab Shneir Zalman of the Adi, one of his great innovative ideas in the Tanya, the 4th section, chapter 20, that the body has something the soul doesn't even have. Because the body has an experience, because of its lack of spiritual, call it vitality, or lack of light, as he puts his expression, it touches the very core of the essence that's beyond definition. That's why the body does not feel that anything created it. It has a certain self. That very self, which before we described can be seen as self-interest, is actually driven by a force that's beyond any source that gives it the ability to think that way. The problem is the body has to come to realize that was created and it does have a source. But on its own, where does it come from? That feeling? It comes from an entity that's beyond. The light of the soul recognizes that it comes from something. That's why it searches its creator. Like a flame rising and asking, why am I here? What's my purpose? The body not asking that question actually is coming from a very core place. But you need the soul to reveal that to the body. But you need the body because it experiences ultimately the essence in the most powerful way. So in that context, body and soul are partners. And in that sense, that question of their tension is only ostensibly there. But you come to think about it, if you can reach that third point, then there should be no tension at all. So firstly, it answers the question, what keeps the body and soul together? That third force. Secondly, as far as the practical application, we don't need asceticism or surrender to materialism. Materialism, like matter, is pulsating, saturated with energy waiting to be released. It's not that the soul is another entity. It is the soul of this body. It's the energy. There's energy within the body. In addition, there's the energy of the soul that energizes the body. And that energy of the soul releases the energy of the body. So essentially the approach to life is not one of asceticism, escape from the material. Your body is not your enemy, even though it appears so initially. It's also not surrendering to the body. It's spiritualizing the material. It's taking your body and sanctifying it, not ignoring it. Obviously taming it to the point that it shouldn't be destructive to yourself or to others, but ultimately transforming it. And the truth is, with the entire world, everything is neutral. Your eyes, they can look at something that's healthy and motivating. They can look at something that's destructive. Same thing with your hands. You could hit someone and hurt someone, God forbid. You could reach out and help someone. I mentioned before, you eat a meal, you could eat a meal, just self-indulge, or eat a meal and see it as a form of energy that being released into your body, to use it to do constructive things, to do a good deed, to study, to grow, to be transcendent. You're spiritualizing the material. Because realizing, in the words of the Kabbalists, the profound sparks that lie and are embedded in every part of life experience, including the material, and in many ways, even deeper sparks in the material world than in the spiritual dimensions. So it's a whole new take on life. It's a whole new take on, even on a scientific perspective. That what keeps matter stable? Not just the fact, and I'm not negating any of the theories, but not just the fact of those, not just as a result of those theories, but that there's a third dimension that's keeping them together. It's not the atoms that keep the matter together, and it's not the matter that keeps the matter together, because in truth, those two should clash. It's a third voice. Think of it like a conductor of a symphony that makes sure that everything works together. That's what brings body and soul together upon birth. And the same thing upon death. They separate because that third entity wants them to separate at that point. Now, when the body will be fully saturated with spirituality, they will not need to separate. But that's another discussion for another time. So we come away from this as an approach that really affects everything we do in life. In other words, our mission is not just to be more spiritual, but it's to be holy, to be divine, to actually spiritualize the material. Spirituality is a step toward that direction. It's just like you go to school and you study, You can't just do whatever you like. You want to study and discipline yourself, but then you want to go back into life after school and elevate your life. Same thing here. There's obviously a time for introspection, for spiritual meditation, for prayer, for study. But the goal is to bring back whatever you've learned and be the captain of your ship. And guide the body to achieve and actualize its tremendous, potent potential. So at the end of the day, yes, we have a divine partnership, body and soul. Both are divine. One more concealed, one more revealed. Imagine if we didn't have that angst. We wouldn't have that longing. So then you could be satisfied with animal bliss, but that's not who we are. But that longing should not cause us to negate or to escape from our bodies. It should cause us to reach, but take our body with us. And that's ultimately the goal. That through a good deed action on a body level, you can achieve even more than a spiritual meditation. But it's not a contradiction. They all come together in this beautiful, eloquent dance, integrated dance. In the practical terms, it translates into how we live our daily lives. It's not just enough to be a spiritual person, but when that refinement has to also translate into your behavior. Being a kinder person, a more sensitive person, more giving. Because spirituality can also be a power game. People can use it for control and ultimately abuse. And that's when it all gets twisted. Or actually, in the name of spirituality, the body is actually following its own needs and its own temptations. That often happens. You find that. There's a very thin line between spirituality, sensuality, and sexuality. And the true divine person is someone that knows how to take the spirituality and it spells out and directs them in their sensuality and their sexuality to also be refined. And as Maimonides puts it, you want to see who's a truly wise person, don't just look at their intelligence or their spirituality. Look at how they behave, how they walk, how they talk, how they treat others, how they sleep. Because it's ultimately the mundane that needs to be transformed. Whether he said it or not, I don't know, but Bertrand Russell, they attribute the fact that he was once called in by the ethics committee at Cambridge, accused of doing something unethical, having a relationship with one of the students. And they said to him, Professor Russell, you're a professor of ethics. How could you behave so unethically? And his response purportedly was, I'm also a professor of mathematics. I'm not a triangle. So whether it's true or not, but it's a good story. No, that's a separation. That's a compartmentalization between body and soul. That's like they say about Aristotle, who once behaved in a way that was not fitting. He said, now I'm not Aristotle. We're looking for seamlessness, for integration, at least aspiring for integration, where body and soul are directed toward one's direction, to a third place that's neither matter nor spirit, neither matter nor energy, neither body nor soul, but a reality that's not defined by either, and therefore can interface and integrate both. May we each be blessed with the ability to touch that third place and bring it into our lives. And we do that through that word I use often, bittul, a Hebrew word used often in Hasidic thought. Bittul, B-I-T-T-U-L. It's a combination of modesty, humility, suspending yourself in the face of something greater than yourself, which is what healthy spirituality is like, but even transcending spirituality, transcending transcendence. It's a form of total commitment and devotion. It's not about you, not even about the spiritual you. It's experiencing reality because it's reality. not because you're gaining something, not because you even get pleasure. You will get pleasure, you will gain, but that's not why you're driven to do that. Total devotion and commitment to that third divine dimension that creates the partnership between matter and energy, between matter and spirit, between body and soul. Simon Jacobson of the Meaningful Life Center, meaningfullife.com. Please subscribe to our offerings like this and many others. Check it out at meaningfullife.com. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel. Please share, and I'd love to hear your feedback, thoughts, comments in this glorious partnership, creating the cosmic symphony of each of us as indispensable musical notes in this one unified greater whole, the harmony within our diversity. Thank you, and be blessed.
This program is brought to you by the Meaningful Life Center. Please help us continue our programs. Make even a small contribution at meaningfullife.com/donate.